Divine Rise. Blessed be to your day on this day of 10. Understand that, it's the day of 10. The day of that most malleable metal. How are you shaping your day? How are you shaping yourself? What are you doing to shape yourself? What are you doing to bring yourself into that space where you at? I had to understand something with myself, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit because, all week we've been getting deep into these aspects. And before we get into Friday, tomorrow, night's class, we're going to be getting into that automatic thought, understanding the aspects of the automatic thought. You live in an autopilot, autonomous thought. Been breaking that down all week. I had to understand that desperation augmented my awareness. What I felt was a need or a lesson, that desperation, that living in this state of desperation with oneself, it augments my awareness, or rather my self-awareness. It augments my awareness, so naturally I'm looking at the conditions of my space. So I'm not even looking at the conditions of my space, how I'm living, how I'm waking up, how I'm eating. I'm not looking at these things. So then I'm not taking into the self-awareness or the self-assessment of myself and understanding my standard. We got deep into that last night during the God Hour show. We talked about that, denominators of regret. So simply something being stagnant, we think about no motion. The first thing we think about with the traumatic responses, based on through this level of living in this desperate space with ourselves, we think just because we're in motion, just because we're doing something, just because we're in that space, I'm doing this, I'm having this, none of that has anything to do if I'm not aware of the original undertone or that emotional aspect of why I'm doing it. Like, it'll do me no good to think about it like this. Every Saturday when you were younger, you were told to cut the grass. I remember cutting the grass every Saturday. Don't know why I woke up. All I knew was I didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to wake up that early. I didn't want to go outside, smell like grass. I didn't want to run over frog. I had this whole definition in my mind of regretting waking up Saturday. But still I woke up. I still cut the grass every single Saturday. So now, coming into my space, that's what I used as my level of awareness in doing things. So it didn't matter what my emotions were. This is how we start looking at these things. We think about the emotional underlines when we go into these spaces. It didn't matter what I was feeling into the space. I just knew that I did it that way. So I just we just keep repeating that aspect. So now you don't even understand where you at and why you're doing what you're doing. Even though you getting up and going to work every single day. Every day, even though you go to work every single day. Every day you get up and go do something or go do this. You're not looking, you're moving in that automatic thought. That automatic trigger point of that thought. Just think about, you go somewhere and if somebody looks at you and if you say, good morning, grand rising, whatever it is, based on their level of their automatic thought is what they're going to trigger to go into that space. So even if you learning some aspects of yourself based in the conditions of your space, that's why you'll have certain people be like, you can't say good morning to somebody because they were like, nah, we ain't morning over here, we rising. That trigger point letting them know maybe it's something that you do need to kill off. Maybe it's something that you do need to mourn. Maybe it's something you need to sit down with. Maybe I should look at it that way. Remove this partial aspect. Instead of me going into this whole rant, greetings. Instead of me going into this whole rant about why it wasn't this or why this didn't happen or why this didn't happen. I'm aware of the space. I'm aware of the conditions, but I'm not self-aware of my own self or why I feel I'm triggered by this. This is the aspect of you understanding, like, I remember putting myself in positions just because I had this, and this, that defined happiness. That defined my happiness. But if I didn't have those things, now I'm desperate to go get those things back. Now I'm in a state of depression, or I'm in my lower state of consciousness playing out this role because I'm used to what I was getting. I was getting what I wanted. Desperation augments our awareness and puts our focus on our wants. No matter what it is that you want, whatever the result is, it focuses on the wants. It takes us away from understanding the needs or the lessons to elevate our standard, to elevate and become the example of whatever, because whatever my standard is, everything that I do is an example of that. So if I'm doing low vibrational shit, that means my standard, my quality and my standard, I'm of a low quality and standard. I can say all day, I can blame my conditions, I can blame where I'm at, I can blame the people, I can do that all day. Because of my desperation to remain aloof to what I need to do to assess my standard. And now I look at my space and I look at what I keep creating inside of my space. I put this here, I put that there, I put this over there. So now when I'm looking at things or I'm stressing something, I had to look at why I was stressing it so hard. What did that mean for me? Am I looking at this based on I want to be happy? That makes me happy. So without that, I'm not happy. That's what I'm telling myself. So now I'm pushing towards that. My job made me happy. My job didn't make me happy. In reality, my job made me money. My job made me money. I was able to buy some things. So without the job, so now I'm breaking it all the way back down. Without the job, now, am I still happy? Yeah, I'm still, now me looking at me now as compared to before, hell yeah, I'm still happy. I needed that to happen. See, this is when we're changing these aspects, when we're coming into that space. Just like if I go outside right now and it's raining, like today I woke up, today was my run day. I went for my walk. I walked to the space I walked and then I ran back. And it was raining outside. It was a nice little drizzle outside. Instead of me sitting here and naturally being like, man, well, it's raining outside, I ain't gonna go do my workout. I was like, maybe I need the rain. Maybe I need to do some cleansing and some clearing out. That's how you start looking at things from an impartial standpoint. But my desperation to fit into certain aspects of my life, it kept me in that one note. Remember, universe is that song. But if I'm stuck in desperation, I'm only singing one note. Everything that I do has to come through this note. So everything on that note, on that line, in that score, if I'm frustrated with myself, if I'm irritated, if I'm waking up irritated, that means that one note, I have to ride that one note out. I'm not aware, I'm not taking awareness into this note. I'm blaming everything else for it, but everything outside of my space is only reflecting me being irritated. So of course, everything that I focus on, that automatic thought, is everything that's supposed to make me irritated. Instead of me, when I wake up, if I wake up irritated, like yesterday, I woke up a little bit irritated. Don't know, I had like some stagnant energy on me. But then the first thing I did was like, all right, cool, let me go grab this sage real quick. Oh, yeah. And then that's when I made that post about Grand Rising. That's when I made that post about the bowl with all the stuff in it. And then I was feeling this aspect. And if I was not aware of how I deal with things, in my awareness how I deal with things when they come up, in that moment, staying in my present moment, I wouldn't have been able to take that download, write that down, and put that information out. I wouldn't be able to move the way that I move. Remember, it's not about me avoiding my guilt. It's not about me avoiding my doubts. It's not about you avoiding these aspects. It's not about you avoiding these points where you have these points of desperation. It's about understanding what is the root to that, what is the root to it. That's the only way you're going to find it. If not, that's whenever you think about when the spirit, and now you want to be mad, can you say the spirit mad at you? Oh my God, the spirits are angry. The ancestors are angry. I didn't feed them enough. I didn't do this, this, and this. That's you talking to yourself. I talked about it yesterday in the God Hour show. Like when I look at when I have the altar set up over here, the altar is an extension of me. My altars are an extension of me. So if I feel some type of way about the altar and what anything dealing with the altar, I'm looking at an aspect of myself. That doesn't work. That energy over there, that's the energy that's happening over there. I got to be in sync with it. So I got to raise myself up. So now I got to, once again, go back to my standard. But if I'm looking at my conditions, always talking about these conditions, if I put these intentions in those conditions, then if the conditions don't change, then it doesn't work. But I going deeper into this, that desperation for that want, and you keep getting what you need and then ignoring your needs, naturally think about the flow that you are now stagnant because you are ignoring your needs. You look into your space and it only magnifies more of it magnifies inside of your space where you have created these points in your life where you compromise your standard, you compromise your standard in that space, and you got exactly what you wanted. You got exactly what you wanted. But then you realized to yourself, the regret came up, the insecurity came up, that doubt came up, that little shadow came up and hit you like, are you qualified for this? And then it's always in the learning process, because now you're sitting there trying to do everything in your power to change the conditions for that. Now that's what you're looking at. I should not be, one thing that I had to learn in breaking myself down, I got some pictures I'm gonna put up throughout the day. One thing I had to learn about myself was, one thing that you learn in doing your internal work is grand rising. What you're looking at is what you're taking in. I'm not trying to do it as a trophy. See, the survival complex, the survival mode, it has you doing things and using things as a trophy. All the information you take in, you're trying to use it as a trophy. Think about it like this. It was a trophy. The acknowledgement of my wound, the acknowledgement of certain things, especially when you come into this healing aspect, especially when you're dealing with, you have to understand that you were just a trophy of the circumstance. A lot of things that you did, you were a trophy of circumstance. That's why you felt this desperation to conquer it. But once you got it, and then once it was there, and you didn't understand that, oh shit, this is testing my standards. This is testing my standards. This is testing my quality of life. This is showing me some things. Then you started stepping back. I know, I used to do that shit. Think about it, I used to do that shit all the time. You'll go get the information, and then you feel good because it feeds into that acceptance. It feeds into that wound. But it also feeds the rejection. The rejection that you have not dealt with within yourself. That regret that you have not felt within yourself. So now you're desperately trying to prove yourself. You're desperately trying to prove yourself at every given moment. It's like, yeah, that's all. Yeah, the experience, exactly. The experience points in the video game. You sitting there literally trying to, there's nothing to, in my conditions, if I'm always trying to prove things based on my conditions, I'm always gonna compromise my standard. Every single time. I don't know how many times. Think about it when I remember going to my job and I'm looking at the conditions of the space and I'm watching people literally work in these conditions, not cleaning up, not wiping shit down. And then by me not saying anything, that was my lesson, because the longer that I didn't say anything, the longer that it would go on, or the longer they would stay in that space doing the same shit. And then what would that say about me? If I walked into my job and I'm like, all y'all niggas is nasty, y'all doing all this shit, what does that say about me? I gotta look at my life, because why am I triggered by that? Because somewhere in my life, somewhere in one of my environments that I create in order to sustain myself, that's what I'm doing. It's deep down showing me some aspects about myself. But I'm so desperate to prove myself that I'm losing the lack of awareness. I'm so desperate to get something based on a want that I'm not looking at the necessary things that I need to learn. It's like going into a space and then somebody, it's like, think about that trigger. If you sit there and tell a chick that you want to talk about more. I remember this is something that's happened to me before. And their physical attachment, they're used to using the physical aspect. They're not used to really using the mental. So now they're looking at space with me and they're like, nigga, so you scared of women? Like, no. You gay? No. They'll try to chime in on these. What they're gonna do is that until I understood it, they're projecting the insecurities of themselves onto me until one of them sticks. And back in that time, that shit would stick. Trying to be accepted. So now I'm inside the spaces, and now I'm realizing that to maintain in order for me to maintain myself in that space, I gotta distort and compromise my standard because of that fear. Instead of me sitting there, because now I'm looking into the space. So even when I go get information, when I go get new knowledge, when I learn some new shit, I keep bringing it back to that space. I keep, this, and this, and this, and this. But I'm operating from the same insecurity. So of course it's their comfort zone versus my comfort zone. I'm still in comfort because I have not created an example within myself. I just wanted to go get that. Ooh, I got the book on numerology. So now I know my numbers. So this is why I'm this, and this. And this is why you this, and this. So what does that mean? I'm just saying, like, that's why you the way you are. And that's why we ain't that's why we ain't gonna work, or this is why this. Regardless of me being inside of that space, because I still was activated off the negative aspect or the bias, that's all I was doing inside the space. Limiting my awareness, limiting my ability to self-reflect. So now I'm going into, so now I'm in the relationship. So now I'm in the relationships and I'm saying it's because of this, and this, and this, and this. Instead of me sitting in the space, it's based on experience. So now, while I was on my walk, I thought about this aspect. Your standard reflects in your life. It's how you reflect, how you shown in your space. So if I'm constantly in spaces where the conditions are not too savory, what does that say about my standard? I could just be plain out ignoring my standards. I'm compromising my standard. Therefore, I'm compromising my energy. Therefore, it requires more energy to stay in somewhere where just to simply be accepted. It requires more energy for me to go into that space. So now I'm desperate to fit in. So now my desperation peaks. Desperation is showing me where I'm lacking in awareness. My depression is showing me that I'm acting in a lower aspect of myself. When I'm feeling guilty, that means I'm in a space where I've not yet learned to move in my childlike innocence of embracing the shame or the doubt that I'm feeling. So now I'm learning how to navigate through every space, not just the spaces where I feel like I'm to stay in the superior complex, but to keep me in my most humblest state, period. Staying on my square. That's peeling back those layers. Remember, think about the longer that you stay separated from yourself, you created another layer of reaction. So that's when you just moving in your space. You got multiple layers of reaction. This layer right here is based on everything that I've ever done for everybody. So I desperately stay locked in this space. So every time I go into a space, the first thing that I want to say to motherfuckers is, but I did all these things. I'm doing all of this stuff. I'm doing all of this and this, this, and this. I'm compromised. What I needed to admit to myself is I'm compromising my standards for you. But since I didn't have emotional intelligence, I was afraid of that vulnerability. I was afraid to say that. So when I go back to look at the space that I was in, the conditions of the last space, the conditions of the last job, the conditions of the last relationship, the conditions of the last friendship, to accept what I did or why I needed that space to exist, I'm always back at motherfuckers ain't good enough for me. I'm not good enough for myself. Remember this, take this shit, take me the way that I am. I will take you the way that you are. I will take you the way that you are. I accept you the way that you are. Naturally, I accept you the way that you are. I accept you for who you are. But understand that coming into this space, my standard, my balance is always going to trigger you. It's always going to trigger you. Everything that I do is going to trigger you until you're ready to accept that aspect. And that's something that in that train of thought, changing my automatic thought, that's something that I had to realize for myself and accept to myself. I don't know how many times I said that shit to myself in the mirror until I was in the space of nothingness with myself. The identity that I created at that point was always trying to fight it. So now when I go into a space now with myself, it's okay. I'm like the natural aspect when I go into the space of the depth with myself is when I go into a space. But this also helps me remain impartial and keeps me in discernment. I leave conversations where they're at. I leave people where they're at. Since I'm in this frequency of love with myself, I leave things where they're at. Because I remember one of the first quotes that I said, one of the first quotes that I ever read was talking about with a flower. And if you love a flower, you leave the flower where it's at and you nurture it where it's at. You bring it to where it's at. You don't try to move it from where it's at. You nurture it where it's at. Once you nurture something inside of a space and it gets too big for that space, it'll naturally call to be removed from that space. So now that's how I look at things. Instead of me, hey, you gotta, no. If I feel that you need to learn how to plan, that means somewhere inside of me, I'm not planning something. I'm still in that old pattern of myself. Then you can transplant it elsewhere. So now I leave it where it's at. I let it do what it does. Do what thou wilt. But understanding and coming into this space, I have a standard that's of myself. Yeah, that's the exact way not to cause the attachment. Because when you're in that space based on that lower aspect, you're desperate for this want, you're desperate for this attachment, you're in this desperate state with yourself every single time on schedule. You gonna be sitting there like, nah, but it gotta be like this. But you ain't looking at the standards, you ain't looking at your own standard. You're not doing the, you become so obsessed with being seen all the fucking time in that state and what that state does for you, and it brings you a certain level of energy, but that's not your energy. That's recycled. That's you sitting in that recycled state. You keep recycling the conditions from the last relationship in your current relationship. Well, they did this and they were like this, and my ex was stupid and they were this and they were this. What does that say about you? Well, I was this and I was that and I was this. Okay, go a little bit deeper. It's gonna hurt, promise you, but you need it to happen. It's changing that automatic thought. It's changing from the negative aspects of the automatic thought or this autonomous thought that leads you to the negative point versus now you're inside of a space with yourself where when I have the thought, I'm aware of my thoughts. You want to be this higher level being. I'm aware of my thoughts. I'm aware of the roots of my thoughts. In order to change this, to change my direction, I got to address these thoughts. We're going to get deep in that tomorrow night. But I desire you to be the fucking best. Yeah. Triggered. When you look at being triggered, being triggered is the best thing to happen to you. Being triggered is the best thing to happen to you. Because it lets you, because remember, I've broken this down before, being triggered forces you to become emotionally present. It's the feeling of that emotional presence that you're still looking at the bias points of this is good, this is bad, this is this is that, this is this is that. That's what you reacting to. That's what I mean. You got to move past that point of the reaction. Every time you get triggered, remember, the trigger is the delivery system. So if somebody walk up to you and smack you in your face, are you reacting to the smack or are you reacting to this person smacking you? What are you reacting to? This motherfucker had the audacity to smack me. But what if you asked them, like, why'd you smack me? Would you move it past the point of reaction? If they smacked you and then you ask them, yo, why did you smack me? Could you sit emotionally present in that state and allow them to say why they smacked you? What if they said, I don't know? What if they said, I don't know? Someone bet me over there to smack you. They said I wouldn't do it. Smack some random person. Oh, how would you feel? Like, that's what it is when you're changing these automatic thoughts. This nigga smacked me. Why this motherfucker smack me? Exactly. It's like you got a choice to make. But with your choice, you got to understand what comes from your choice. How far are you willing to go with yourself in that space? What did you learn? I mean, it's going to be instant rock to sleep. But it's like, now you looking at yourself like, every time I come here, something happens. Every time I come here, somebody want to put their hands on me. Somebody want to do this. Somebody all in the face. What is it about this space that always does this? Maybe I need to not be going into this space. What do I go here for? Using this thought process in your mind, it forces you to change the way that you thinking in this aspects with yourself. It forces you to be like, you know what? every time I'm going into space, it's the same result. Do I blame them yeah. It's like every time I'm going into the space, after a while, it's like I gotta stop blaming other things for what I'm doing. Like if I wake up, if I know that I get up at 4:30 if I'm up at 4:30 and I'm starting my day, I know, I am aware that everything that I'm going to do within that day is leading to me 10:30. I know the path to 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I know, but I'm not, now that I'm aware of it, I'm not in a rush. See, when you're not aware of what you're doing and you're not aware of the potential in your perspective, exactly, your mode of operation, you're always going to face everything that come in your space naturally that was based on an emotional void. That's the shit that you chiming in with. I said I was going to go to sleep early, but then my brother called me. I said I was going to go to sleep early, or I said I was going to do this, but then my sister called me. My friend called me. My mom called me talking about that, talking about the da-da-da-da. Your mom last month told you that. Your mom last month called you about some bill. Your mom last month called you about a bill. But in that same month, you were just talking about, you were excited about the raise you got. In that same sentence, you were excited about you not having the money that you had last month. But in both of those instances, you never set your new standard with your mother in telling her what it was needed to be said. Why? Because that feeling of guilt came up. You can't avoid the guilt because they are the representations of your guilt. They'll always exist based on your representations of you feeling guilty. Maybe you don't feel worthy enough of the fact that you got that money. Maybe it's the way that you felt about getting it. The shame, whatever it may be. But that's what that's what you need to deal with. Or else you always gonna make money that one way. You always gonna make money on one note. All I know how to do is hustle. All I know is how to do this. All I know is how to. You see how you get stuck in your own damn desperation loop? But we don't get deep into that tomorrow. I desire you to be the fucking best. Every day that you waking up, what are you doing with it? Are you ready to? The first thing you got to do is accept your own bullshit. You got to accept your own BS and your own patterns. You got to accept your shit. You got to accept it. Not from a space so you can stay relevant and keep trying to make things relatable to it. Okay, you can say, I can wake up. I remember waking up being irritated and I would say it's because of my job, or it's because of my girlfriend, or because of my nieces and nephews, or because of something. But in reality, I'm irritated because I'm not addressing aspects of myself. I can put it off on everything else, but that shit will remain as long as I remain in that mindset. So it's time to, what do you want to do? That's why I always enjoy with it. Be the fucking best. If you ready, you say, you know what, I want to go deeper, you know where to find me. Hit me in the inbox. Hit me in the shadows of the inbox. Hit me in the shadows of the inbox. Let's get this work. Whether it's a mini consultation, which is a reading, or you want to do that shadow work consultation, maybe you've had your shadow work consultation already. Maybe it's time for you to tap in and get to that next point. I am a man simply pointing. I am a God simply pointing at the crossroads. I can give you what you want. Hey, I got two. I literally, yes. Whichever one you hit. Yeah. I had to think about, I thought about some other shit, like to get to a point with yourself where you're sitting there and you're impartial is one of the most powerful points that you can get to. Once you understand how to become impartial, that means you can look at both sides in an equal manner and you can accept if something triggers you. This triggered me, let me work on this. This didn't trigger me, okay, cool. And now you learn how to bring that balance, you're limitless. It's time to step into the limitlessness. Stop saying you can't fly because you ain't never seen nobody fly. And let's learn the mechanics of your flight. Stop saying that you can't do something. And stop saying you can't do this or you can't do that because of this, and this. And really sit with yourself and assess why. Because some of the things that you're wanting to do are based on a want or a desperation to keep you in that lower aspect of yourself rather than you coming to the higher aspect. Stop avoiding yourself. I love you. We love us. Ashe.